Hello children and welcome back to the session. So today we are going to learn about a very interesting thing. But before we begin, we need to just recall a few things. So we've done food, we've done various sources of food. We know that some food comes from animal sources, some food comes from plant sources. But plants, animal, human beings, where do they all get their food together from? They get their food from plants. And where do plants get their food from? Plants grow in the soil. Soil is where they are able to hold themselves in the ground. They are able to draw energy from the sun and carry out photosynthesis. That means soil becomes a very important resource for plants, animals and human beings. So we are going to learn about this very important resource today, soil. And in the chapter of soil, we are going to learn about how soil is formed, formation of soil, types of soil, composition of soil, soil profile, soil erosion and conservation of soil. So you must have visited your school garden or the garden in your house at some point in time. Have you ever felt the texture of soil? You will find tiny bits of stones in it, you will find mud in it, and you will also find some organisms in it. So how was this soil formed? Millions and millions of years ago, the earth was covered with huge pieces of rocks because of very strong sun, very heavy rains and very fast blowing winds. These huge pieces of rocks were broken down into tiny particles. This process was known as weathering, and it took millions of years for soil to form. Now on the top layer of soil, all the dead plants and dead animals began to decay and they converted into a rich fertile material which was called humus. Humus is very rich in minerals and it is this layer of the soil that plants grow in. Now, having understood the formation of soil, let us understand the types of soil. So, the different types of soil are based on the size of the particles, they are based on the color and they are based on the texture. That is how the soil feels on hand. Now, let us first understand about the heaviest size of particle which forms the clay soil. Clay soil, the sand particles are very closely bound, because of which clay becomes very heavy. It does not allow water to pass through. Therefore, clay soil is used in making toys and pots. The second kind of soil is loamy soil. Loamy soil contains the right size of soil particles. It contains the right amount of sand and clay, and it also contains the important ingredient humus, which is very important for growing crops. That is the reason loamy soil is mostly used for growing crops and vegetables. Sand is the lightest and the driest of all types of soils. It does not allow water to stand through. The water immediately passes through. This is the reason sandy soil cannot be used for growing crops. And sandy soil is usually found on beaches or in a desert. Now let us understand the composition of soil. As you can see in the picture indicates soil profile. The top soil contains the rich humus layer which is important for growing plants, and it is also important for animals such as earthworms, rabbits, etc., which burrow their homes into the soil. The next layer is called the subsoil. Subsoil is the middle layer of the soil which has got small stone particles also in it. The third is the bedrock or underground water. Bedrock has got less of sand and more of huge size rock particles, and the underground water that seeps down the ground when it rains very heavily is also stored in the bedrock underground water. The next important concept to understand in this chapter is soil erosion. Now, sometimes you would have seen that when there are no trees on top of the soil, when it rains heavily or when there is heavy wind blowing, the top layer of the soil blows away. This is known as soil erosion. So, soil erosion is a process in which the top layer of the soil, which is humus, is blown away or washed away by wind or water. Now, this happens mainly because of cutting down of trees, large-scale deforestation, large-scale animal grazing. It is very, very important for us to understand the importance of saving the soil. The process of saving the soil is known as conservation of soil. Conservation of soil is important because we need soil for growing crops. We need crops for survival of both human beings and animals. So the first step in conservation of soil is plantation. We must plant a lot of trees, a lot of flowers in our garden. We must also make sure that there are a lot of shady trees along the roadside. The second thing is use of cover crop. A cover crop is planted in the field in between two crops, so that during the time there are no crops growing in the field, there is still some plant there to hold the soil in its place. The next is terrace farming. If you have seen mountains, slopes of mountains usually have steps cut out on them. These steps are used for cultivating crops. So when the rain comes, the water flows through these steps and the soil is not just simply washed away. Constructing dams and embankments. So during the time of heavy rains, when the water flows down with a very high speed, the soil on both sides of the banks of the rivers is usually washed away. So when we construct dams and we build strong boundaries along the bank of the rivers, we can prevent this soil from being washed away. Also, we need to understand that certain organisms such as earthworms who keep digging through the soil up and down, they're actually a farmer's best friend. Reason being, these are the organisms that keep the soil very well aerated and tilled. So in this chapter, we have learnt about a very important resource which is called soil. We have also learned the different kinds of soil. Why soil erosion is a very, very dangerous thing. We have learned the steps to convert soil conservation. Thank you so much.